Hello and welcome to the session on importance of library in education. Francis Bacon in his famous essay of studies says, reading make a full man, conference a ready man and writing an exact man. And it is libraries that promote a reading habit in a human being, making her or him a complete human being. That is precisely why K.J. Saidin rightly observed, no school or university without a library adequate for its need and size should be recognized as a worthy educational center. In this unit, we will discuss library in detail. At the end of the unit, you will get a fair idea of the following: importance of library, objectives of library, functions of library, important resources in a library, a good library, requisites of an ideal library, organization of a good library, the role of librarian, library committee, role of teacher in library, forming a library habit in students, etc. Importance of library. Before going to the details, it is imperative that we understand why do we need libraries. A library, defined as any collection of books organized for use, is an integral part of an educational institution. It aids in preserving, organizing and making knowledge available to mass effectively. A library is considered as a center of intellectual life of any educational institution. It offers a glimpse of past literature while making resources for reference readily available. The concept of education is changing and it is no longer classroom centered, but child centered. The child's learning has to be self directed, and library as an agency promote self learning and reading habits in a child. The textbooks aim at giving a common objective to education, while a library aims at developing individual aptitudes and interests. This is exactly why in the developed countries the role of a library plays in promoting knowledge is well recognized. A progressive educational institution will consider library as an asset and as a pride possession. Objectives of library. The objective of any individual educational institution is to equip the students to perform their roles in the society effectively, and a good library helps an educational organization achieve this goal. Given below are a few objectives of the library: to acquire, preserve and make available both non-book and book resources. The non-book resources can include video collection, charts, maps, globes, photographs, newspapers, etc. To offer user education to students, transforming them into discerning users of resources. To cultivate lifelong reading habits in the students. To play an effective role in schools' learning programs and activities. To become a center of information and intellectual activities in a school. Learning activities of the school should be centered around its library, and it should become a hub of learning information. Functions of a library. There was a time when libraries are regarded as a place to store and preserve books. This was due to the fact that books were difficult to produce and rare. The advent of printing technology has changed the availability factor of books. The modern day library is user oriented, and the goal of each library is to make the user available documents and information. Thus, library is known as a service unit. The library helps users find books and other reference materials through indexes, catalogs, bibliographies, etc. The library cooperates with other agencies to teach students how to find information and books. The functions of a library are as follows: promotion of self study. The library aids in self study. It offers a lot of useful resources for extra readings, increasing possibility of self education. It can, to an extent, replace the classroom learning activities. The library in fact open in front of person an opportunity to learn on their own without spending huge money on books and other resources. Broadening of interests. A library can positively influence a person by broadening the area of interest or presenting him or her with an opportunity to explore new domains of knowledge. A user can read rare manuscripts and go through a reservoir of knowledge accumulated through ages. The familiarity with information and literature may even motivate a reader to write his or her own book in the future. Provide information. As we mentioned earlier, libraries are rich sources of information. Knowledge, since the emergence of books, can be preserved and made accessible to readers through library. Source of inspiration. Libraries and the rich information they preserve can be a great source of inspiration. Many noted personalities have said that books were great source of influence for them. Development of reading habits. The library introduces people to reading habits. Students learn to read silently, read for pleasure, read to extract extra information, and reading for everyday development. Leisure time hobby. Libraries offer one the opportunity to cultivate a productive hobby, reading. One can use his or her free time productively by reading. Training in proper use of books. Libraries teach students how to use rare and costly books. They will learn to read and handle books without spoiling them. Development of critical thinking. Libraries with their books can make people approach issues in a different way. Books introduce a reader radical thinking, new arguments, and various intellectual frameworks. Participation in co-curricular activities. A person who uses the library property finds it easy to participate and perform in co-curricular activities such as debate, write magazine articles, quiz, science competitions, etc. All round development of students. Reading various literatures alone can encourage a student to discover himself or herself and identify his or her interests and aptitudes at a young age. Important resources in a library. A good library should be rich with resources. Here is a list of important resources a school library should have. Books. Books are an integral part of any library. The book resources can be further categorized into the following. Textbooks. The library should have a range of textbooks on various subjects. Library materials. The library must have literary works that are easy to read for children. Adventure books can be a great addition to the library. Books that contain children hobbies such as how to make a boat, etc., should also find a place in the library. Easy to read inspirational biographies, animal stories, travel books, magical stories, etc., are favorite with students. Reference materials. A school library must have good reference materials. Typically, the reference materials can be classified into two: standard or conventional and non-conventional reference materials. Conventional resource materials include dictionaries, encyclopedias, yearbooks, atlas, maps, pamphlets, handbooks, manuals, etc. Non-conventional reference books are any other books that are not conventionally used as reference books and yet can be useful. Non-book resources. Any library should be supplemented with non-book resources which include periodicals. Magazines and periodicals that deal with current affairs and news are an important addition to any library. Pamphlets. Every library should subscribe to pamphlets published by various government agencies and bureaus. Newspapers. It is advised to school libraries subscribing to a few national and local newspapers. Special documents and publications. Yearbooks and date books. Folders containing rich information about various towns and cities can also be good additions to a school library. Audio visual or non-reading materials. A good school library will have film strips, models, films, projector, radio, TV, recording equipment, etc. Organization and essentials of an ideal library. According to Rabindranath Tagore, a library should have select books on all the subjects. The librarian should be devoted to his career and offer books to his readers as host does to his or her guests. Well, every modern school should have a good library with selected books on every subject, and the library should be made an integral part of learning. In this module, we will discuss how a good library is organized and what the requisites of an ideal library are. Organization of a good library. Location and design. The location and design of the library is very important. The library should be located in a strategic place. It should be easily accessible from the classrooms and preferably away from outside noise. From the library, the reading room should be easily accessible to students. The design of the library is equally important. There should be adequate light and shelving to keep the documents and books. It should have good acoustic management. The room design should allow flexible movements of materials and equipments. The library has to be huge enough to accommodate 40 students at a time, giving each one 10 square feet space. Reading tables, comfortable chairs, catalog stand, etc. are necessary in a good library. Selection of books. What a good library needs is not a collection of books, but a collection of selected books. Importance should be given to choosing the books that are needed for fulfilling the aims of a school library. When selecting the books, both students and teachers' interest should be taken into account. It is better to choose books that have value for longer period. A good library should have books from the following genera: books that inspire, poetry, drama, biographies, etc. Books that include information, science, history, general knowledge, travel related books, etc. Books for recreation, short stories, novel, humor, essays, etc. Books for reference, encyclopedia, dictionaries, atlases, etc. should be part of any good library. Books for young kids. For younger kids, there should be well illustrated fairy tales and fables. Books for teachers. A librarian should stock books that are useful to the teachers. They are mostly reference books on various topics. Books that can be used by the community members. It is advised to keep some books that are useful for the community members of the school. Sources of book selection. The following are a few sources that help schools select useful books for their libraries. List of books recommended by the Director of Public Instruction for Schools, NCERT, SIE, School of Education Boards, review of books, published newspapers and magazines, etc. Staff. The minimum number of staff required to run a good school library include a librarian and an attendant. The qualification of the librarian can be library training and BA. At least 2 member staff is required to encourage open access to the library. We will discuss the role of a librarian in detail in the next module. Library committee. Every school must have a library committee. It is the committee that put forward policies regarding the use and maintenance of the library. The committee normally include principal or head teacher as the chairman, one representative from a senior class and librarian as convener. Classroom library. Classroom library is a small library placed in the charge of a teacher within the classroom. Each class will have a separate library. A classroom library cannot be considered as substitution for the school library. It should in fact work as an addition to the main library. By maintaining a classroom library, borrowing and returning books can be made easy and can make references readily available for both the teachers and the students. In a classroom library, books are kept in front of the students, encouraging them to use references often. The role of librarian: teachers and students. Role of a librarian. A librarian has an important role to play in making the library a functional place. From ensuring that library is situated in the right place to making materials and documents accessible to the students, a librarian has a number of responsibilities. The Secondary Education Commission rightly observes that a librarian's role is not confined to the four walls of a library, but she or he should give adequate publicity to good books. A librarian has to be an amiable and approachable person and should be happy to help the students in finding the references and books they are looking for. The school librarian should also have a fair knowledge about the new teaching methods. Functions of a librarian. Below is a list of some of the important functions of a school librarian. A librarian, in consultation with the head teacher and the library committee, should prepare certain rules related to the use of the materials in the library. She or he also has to ensure that the rules are practiced and maintained. The librarian has to keep the rules displayed in the library for the borrowers. The librarian has to invite courts, call for list of books, prepare catalogues, classify books, number books, display cuttings and notices on the board, annual stock taking of books, getting trained in operating audiovisual equipment, training students to search for references and books and using catalogues, etc. A librarian has to ensure a quiet and comfortable atmosphere in the library. She or he has to make sure that magazines, newspapers and periodicals are received regularly and properly stacked. She or he has to help teachers organize a class library. A librarian should ensure that books are not misplaced or damaged and are returned by the students and teachers at the right time. She or he also needs to make sure that proper fund allocations are done to buy books and other materials for the library. Role of teacher. Teachers and librarians should work together to ensure maximum utilization of library. The barrier between the library and the classrooms should be reduced in order to embrace new teaching and learning methods. The teachers should never stop studying. The books in the library should help them in updating and widening their knowledge on a particular subject, which will in turn increase their efficiency as a teacher. The teachers has to get themselves familiar with the important reference materials and books so that they can direct their students and help them find the right reference and books. A teacher should be able to advise students about the types of books they should read and about the types they should stay away from. Only a teacher with good reading habits can stimulate and inspire students to read and extract more information and knowledge. A teacher has to allocate assignments and projects that encourage students to perform a bit of extra reading. The teacher has to motivate students to write, choose and edit articles or literary works for school magazines. Students should be encouraged to keep a library, notebook or a diary, and students who do extra reading can be given credits and recognition. The teacher should be also able to recommend to the students relevant and newly published books or articles related to the subject he or she is teaching. Forming a library habit in students. Students as users of the library play an important role in the success of a school library. Below are a few guidelines a librarian can pass to the students in order to ensure smooth functioning of the library. Books should not be spoiled or damaged. Students should enter comments about the books they have read in their library books or diaries. Students should get familiar with the rules and regulations of the school library. The students has to learn to maintain a calm atmosphere in the library. The students should be encouraged to discuss their doubts with their teachers and classmates. The students should be trained to quote from the books they have read whenever there is a chance for them to do so. Even though educational commissions have stressed the need for a good library from time to time. The conditions of most of the school libraries in the country are not satisfactory. Most of the school libraries henceforth cannot motivate the students to read and acquire extra knowledge. Schools and government authorities need to give more care in building proper libraries and cultivating a reading habit in both the students and the teachers. Let me summarize the session. In this unit, we have discussed the school libraries in detail. We have discussed why libraries are important, and by offering students resources for extra reading, how libraries improve the quality of education. We have also discussed the objectives of the library, which include cultivating reading habit in students, teaching them how to use a library, turning libraries into a learning hub, etc. The library has number of functions. It need to become a hub of knowledge, should have textbook and non-textbook resources. Non-textbook include maps, atlas, audiovisual aids, projectors, etc. We have also learned the characteristics of good school library and the requisites for a good library. The library should be located in a place accessible to everyone. The design of the library should give room for flexible movement of materials and should have proper ventilation and lighting. The librarian, library committee, teacher and students play vital roles in the smooth functioning of a library. Along with the professional duties, a librarian has to create and implement rules for libraries and should ensure that those rules are displayed and obeyed by the users. Students and teachers have to follow the guidelines given by the librarian, and the teachers should strive to cultivate a reading habit in students. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. Why is library an important component of a school plan? Write a short note. As a teacher, what measures will you take to cultivate a reading habit in the children? What are the steps we can take to popularize the school library? Discuss. Describe the functions of a school library. Write a short note on the role of a librarian. What are the guidelines related to the use of library for students? Why do we need a classroom library? Hope that you may go through the reference books for further reading. School Administration and Management, written by Kochar SK and published by Sterling Publishers Private Limited, New Delhi in the year 2011. Library Organization, written by Kumar K and published by Vikas Publishing House Private Limited, New Delhi 1997. School Organization and Administration, written by Sidhu KS and published by Sterling Publishers Private Limited, New Delhi 1996. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.